there, I'm Kat. Thank you for joining me for a chat with Kat. We're going on a journey and having conversations with people from a variety of backgrounds and experiences. And during this journey, we're going to probably laugh and smile. We'll have moments of compassion and cry. We may be angry or feel confronted, and we may be amazed and just need to ponder. So, whatever the emotion is that comes up, let's take a moment to breathe and ask ourselves why we're feeling this. And also, let's ask, what can I learn from this? So go ahead and like, share, subscribe, and make sure that your friends and family and colleagues and anyone you feel could get something from this gets to see this. So let's get on with our journey with Chat with Kat. Okay. Well, hey Christine, it's so nice to see you. Thank you so much for coming and having a chat with me. I do know we know each other. We met in person through our self-perfected group, and we met in San Diego. But I know a lot of people don't know who you are, so they're going to come in, check this out. So tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. So thanks for having me here, first of all. And yeah, a little bit about myself. So my name's Christine. I grew up in Toronto, Canada. I am currently living in Orlando, Florida, which I guess we'll get into that the more that we get into our conversation. But part of that is because of the self-affected group. But anyway, I grew up in Toronto. I went to the school, like University of Toronto, and I graduated with a science degree there. And then my goal was to be an naturopathic doctor, and then that didn't work out. So that led me into doing holistic nutrition. And then when I was working as like a one-on-one coach for a little while, I was moved out. I was, doing all the things with my online social media kind of thing. And then the pandemic hit, or actually just before the pandemic hit, I had moved back home to my parents. The pandemic hit. And then just through kind of going through that year of kind of soul searching, figuring out what I was going to do with my life, because like I said, I'd moved back home. I had lost my job, all kinds of stuff because of a variety of reasons, but especially because of the pandemic. I was like, okay, what am I going to do? And then that led me to finding the self-reflected group at the end of 2020. And when I found the group, I was like, okay, I guess the way that it was presented to me was it's a personal development group. And we're really focused on creating a world that's best, but it's through like relationships and having a real purpose and creating real financial freedom for yourself. So I was like, all right, I'm in. And then when I joined the first hangout, it was funny because that, like, I think at that time there was maybe like 200 people in the group. Like, it was still really, really small. But I just remember just being there and then being so, I guess I was like, there was just like a vibe or like a resonance of like, you know what, these people seem to know what they're talking about. Especially, I could see it was a bunch of young people, which I really appreciated, because you didn't see a lot of people around my age. Like, and at the time I was like 27, around my age, really valuing things like relationships or things like entrepreneurship, especially in those circles that I was kind of in, especially back home. So anyways, then after joining the group, I got the tool Techno Tutor to work on my subconscious programming and to essentially reprogram myself for the things that I wanted that wasn't working out for me, such as like my entrepreneurial journey and relationships and all that kind of stuff. Led me to then I met my husband, Drake, and he was living in Orlando. I was in Toronto, and I ended up moving. Well, we met in person after talking for a couple of months in the in the group and on Zoom, having private conversations. And then I ended up meeting him in person. And now, I guess that was like 5 years ago now. Yeah, it was 2021. And then let's see, we're 2025, and 2 years later, we have 2 kids. I have a daughter and a son. And yeah, we're still very, very much involved in the self-perfected group. And honestly, like, I would probably not be here, or at least like where I am today and how sort of how things have played out if it wasn't for the self-perfected group. Like I think I would still be trying if I was like still at home, I probably or still back in Canada at least, I would probably still be like looking for a relationship and trying to figure out my financial situation. So, yeah, that's just like a little summary of what I'm about.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you. And you've had a big journey there, going from Canada to the States. And you did that during the pandemic time, or was that
I
after?
did. I did. So yeah, Canada was super locked down. I'm sure you remember.
Mhm.
And I remember going to the airport in Toronto when I was going to Orlando, and the airport in Toronto was like empty. And this is like a big international airport, and there was like nobody, literally nobody there. And they had all the signs of like you couldn't use the two sinks beside each other because social distancing, all that kind of stuff. And then I get to the States. It's literally like a free for all. Like everybody is not following any protocol. Like it is. It was like the wild, wild west in comparison to what we were experiencing back home in Canada. So yeah, and then it was so funny because the first time that I had met Drake, I came for a short visit, and then I ended up going back home because I was like, okay, let me get my things together, and then we'll kind of get things. Let me go home, get my things together, and then I'll come back, and then we can kind of full speed ahead with our relationship and all that kind of stuff. So when I went back home, I don't know if this happened like in BC, but in Toronto, what they were doing was if you flew back into the airport, into the international airport, you had to like quarantine at a hotel for 3 days. And if you didn't, they were like supposedly going to fine you for like $1 million. Well, there was a loophole, and it was like if you crossed the land border, that you didn't have to do that, but you did have to quarantine. So I remember I actually flew to Buffalo from Orlando. I went to the Niagara Falls border, and I walked across the border with my like big backpack.
Done that. I've done that walk.
And there was nobody around, especially like on the Canadian side. Everything was closed. But you know how Canada and Niagara, or Canada and the US have share a piece of Niagara Falls? Well, the US side was like partying, like popping, everyone's having a great time, like I said. And then I get to the border guard, and he's like where are you coming from, where are you going? And like he was so mean, like so rude and mean to me. He was like, you're being an irresponsible citizen, you shouldn't be traveling at this time, who's picking you up, where are they taking you, where are you doing the quarantine, like just giving me such a hard time. And I was like, this is insanity. It was like living, like when I experienced the two different countries, I was like, I feel like I'm living in the twilight zone in Canada because it was so like it was just so intense with the lockdowns and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, yeah, I did do it during the pandemic, but the US side of things was really easy in comparison to the Canadian side.
Oh boy. I mean, I'm living in Mexico now, and I left during the pandemic, but man, I wish I'd left earlier.
Yeah, unfortunately, like things have really changed a lot there, and I just hear it from my parents too. So it's unfortunate to see what's coming of that, but we're not having a political conversation right now, so we'll leave that we'll leave
We
that
can
for a
talk
different
about
day.
that stuff later. Yeah, for sure. Because that'll definitely get some people going. But you mentioned something that really is like, okay, this is like a big thing that I don't think people understand. You mentioned something about being able to reprogram your mind. What does that mean?
Sure. Okay, so I guess basic, what would you call it? Like psychology, physiology, like as a human. I think a lot of people understand the idea of that we have programs, which really could be redefined as we have beliefs, subconscious beliefs, we have thoughts and feelings and all that kind of stuff that gets put into us from our environment. And especially when we're within the ages of like 0 to 7, people say that phrase where kids absorb things like a sponge, right? And it's really like you're just absorbing and taking in all this information from your environment, and whether it's good or bad, right? We don't really have that discernment when we're kids because we're obviously learning how to discern the information like from our adults, the adults around us and our peers and all that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, though, is that when you download all this stuff and you basically make decisions on how you are going to move through different situations throughout our lives. So, whether it be with relationships, with money, with friendship, like you just name it, anything, it's like we always revert back to these like kind of subconscious beliefs and everything that kind of navigate us through life. And like I said, there's certain, I think for a lot of people, it's like there's certain things in our lives that doesn't necessarily always work out the way that we want it to, or it doesn't pan out the way that we want it to, or we can tell within ourselves that we're like holding back or we're not getting the results that we want. And really it comes back to like looking at, okay, what are my subconscious programs and beliefs that I have around this particular thing of why I'm not getting the thing that I want? Or sometimes it's even like, why do certain things come so naturally to me that's easy for me and other things are not, right? Because all of that stuff is programs. It's not just the bad stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, I started to kind of understand this point before I had joined Self Perfected, but I didn't really understand like how to actually change it other than through it, like they're like I joined Gin, for example, which I don't know. I think you're in Gin or were in Gin at some point, but it's the
Yeah.
Global Information Network, and that was where I had learned about the law of attraction, which kind of focuses on this point of like you need to change your thoughts in order to change your external reality, right? But it's like how do we change our thoughts? And the main way that people kind of understand this is through like affirmations and repeating something over and over and over again. So I guess long story short is that we do have a tool that can actually do that at a very accelerated pace. And I'm not just saying that to say like, oh, it's some like magic or woo woo. It's like, no, if you know how the operating system of your body and your mind works, there are tools and methods that you can use to actually get in there and change those things so that then your output is different. And then it also just gets you to kind of reflect on like, okay, um, or just pause and take a moment of like, I normally act this way. How can I change that? And really take a breath and just be like, okay, how can I move and think differently? And it's kind of, and it just become sort of like a trial and error. And through the tool, it's like that's how you can kind of start reprogramming yourself of like how you want your life to go and not keep making the same decisions over and over and over again. Um, so that you can truly actually create the life that you want, whether it be literally in anything like relationships, money, finding a bigger purpose, all that kind of stuff. So for me, like one of the biggest things was finding a relationship, which like I used, this tool to help me with that. And then also just with like big money points, and even just helping myself with like a big one for me that was going through pregnancy and through birth. I really reprogrammed a lot of subconscious fears and beliefs before I gave birth. That I ended up having a home birth, and through that process of learning about birth and how not to be afraid of the whole situation that was going to happen to me, like I was able to have two really amazing like stable births where if I didn't have this tool to like really support myself with walking through all my fears and knowing how to basically educate myself on what it is that I wanted out of all these situations. um I mean, the common belief, especially around things like birth and pregnancy and postpartum, all this stuff, it's like you just see all the like there's so much fear, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So much fear impulse and something like that's just so physical. But yeah, like there's no reason why you need to participate in those things. Like you can really educate yourself to not have fears around things like that just happen, that do happen like pretty naturally to us. But yeah, it's just like our societal like all the things that are impulsed on us from like movies, music, media, all that kind of stuff. again, like that just comes from like your environment and your upbringing of like that's what, again, going back to the like programs, it's like that's what contributes to all that stuff, right?
Now, okay, so that was great. Thank you for that explanation, because I know a lot of people hear these things and they may not be in the world of self-improvement or self-development, right? And they go, "What are you talking about reprogramming? Like this is
Right,
nonsense," right? So thank you for sharing that, because I think that really explains clearly on, it's more about what we're brought up with in our beliefs and the systems that we're in from very little to, basically all the way up through our childhood. Um, it has some effect on us, good or bad, right?
right, exactly.
Okay. Okay. So you mentioned some things there that you were able to find a relationship and do things with money. What did relationships look like for you before this?
So before I found the group, well, I guess I like from one perspective, you could say like I grew up with a mom and a dad that's are together, stay together, they're still together, and I had a good example of what a stable relationship for the most part looked like. So I knew that's what I wanted. um, but then I guess through the influences of like I guess like modern culture, it was really hard to find someone that wanted that that kind of wanted that type of long-term commitment. So for myself, I did have long-term relationships, but it was never with like the right person. It's like I always like ended up with someone that like I either was kind of mothering in a certain sense, or I we just didn't align in our goals. It's like I was looking 10 years ahead and they were still very focused on like trying to sort out their life right now kind of thing. And I couldn't even think like about the next day. Um, and it was just little things like that. And then it got to a point where like, okay, I had three pretty long-term relationships. Like my longest one was 4 years. And this is in all in my 20s, by the way. So like for most of my 20s, I had been in a relationship with these three different guys. And then at some point I was like, okay, I'm not attracting the person that is right for me. So I'm going to take a little break and let me see like what I can like kind of like I guess find myself more to see what I actually want to attract, right? Um and then as because I think this was like around I think I was like 25 or something. So then when I'm like kind of doing my own, like I said, soul searching and going through my entrepreneurial journey, personal development journey, um, then meeting guys at that time after when I was more clear on like kind of what I wanted, there was just like this culture around dating and relationships where it was like everyone's like non-committal. People want these like they call them situationships where it's like you're not in a relationship but you're in a very emotional relationship with someone or even like a sexual relationship with someone, and no one is no one is thinking about long term at all. Everything is just about instant gratification and then on to the next one, right? So anyways, I was just finding myself like the dating scene is just like a hot mess right now. Like I don't even want to be, especially living in a big city like Toronto where it's just like I don't know, like such a mixed pot of so many different cultures and people, and like you're in a big city, right? So I was getting really frustrated, and I like I said, I just wasn't finding the people that had the same like kind of long-term vision and goals that I did, especially with like having like again the long-term commitment, having a family. And I also knew within myself that I wanted to have kids and I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. But in our current day and age and society, like there's a lot of belief around that both people have to work, and that yeah, like no one was really thinking about kids until they were financially like set or whatever, which at this time it's like people aren't having kids until they're like 40. And I'm like, I definitely do not want to have kids when I'm like that. Like that was me personally. I'm like, I do not want to have kids that late. I would rather figure this out a lot sooner. So anyways, when I had joined the group, like I said, like I finally had found a group of young people that valued relationships and actually were seeing the value of like having a long-term relationship and having a committed relationship and someone that you're going to be with until the end of your days here on earth kind of thing. And also valued the point of family and having children and really raising those children to be very effective and supporting the man and the wife and, you know, really embracing the different roles that as a man and a woman you can bring to the table and not have this very like 50-50 kind of mentality that we're constantly being fed just through like society and social media and all that kind of stuff. So anyways, I I got Technotutor, and that was the first thing that I kind of had to challenge because like I said, just for myself, I was almost getting close to 30. I was like, okay, I do want to have, like I said, I want to have children and I want all these things, but I need to find the person, you know, like in order to even get this timeline of my life going. So it was cool because when I actually had first joined the group, I had done it with a friend of mine who was a male, who was a male, and who I was kind of I was interested in. And then when we came into the group, I was like gaining more confidence of like, okay, let me be more bold of saying what I want especially to the people that I'm interested in, or to the guy that I'm interested in. And when I did that, I totally got rejected. And then that brought like a whole slew of things that I was like, oh shoot, like I really need to reassess my I guess like what I want in a person and all this kind of stuff. And why does this person not want to be with me? And then it was so funny because Drake, my husband now, was actually pursuing me. And I just like could not see it at all. I was like, no, I wanted this person. And even though, Kat, Drake, what he presented to, like, he literally like presented to me like, hey, like I want to be in a relationship with you. This is what I want. This is what I'm looking for. And everything he listed out was everything that I wanted, everything that I had written down, like about what I wanted in a relationship. And I literally said to him, I was like, this sounds amazing, but not with you. Like,
oh, and he came back.
well, I actually came back. Like I realized it took me a couple of months, and people, you know, people might think like you just did, like, I don't know, maybe you just did that because you didn't have any other options or anything. And it was like, no, I saw the value that Drake was bringing me. Like I saw clearly that, you know, what he was presenting was very, like I said, it was everything that I wanted. But because I was so focused on something else that just wasn't aligned with me, it's like I needed to work through all that stuff first to really take the blinders off essentially and see like, hey, you know, the ideas that I have in my head about the specific person and what he needs to look like and blah blah blah, like it's good to challenge those things. And I find that's where a lot of people maybe get stuck, where it's like, well, I'm interested in this type of person. Meanwhile, it's like, are you, you know, questioning that within yourself of, okay, why do you like that type of person? Because for me, it's like that the guy that I was interested in at that time was very much like the other guys that I'd already dated, actually. So it was like, if I had actually pursued that and followed through with it, like I would have just been repeating the same pattern essentially, right? And it was like through using the tools, you know, looking at my subconscious, unconscious beliefs around the relationship and who I'm attracted to and blah, 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 blah. Like I was able to then see like, no, like, anyways, I guess at one point I got to the point where I was able to see other guys kind of thing. I was like, okay, I'm ready to like explore other people. And I went on one date that I had like back home in Toronto. And it was just so funny. Like it was like the guy was nice, whatever, but I was like, this is not for me at all. And it wasn't until I had gone on that one date that I was like, I can't remember what Drake was doing. I think he was like, because I was still, again, we were still in the self-perfected group. So I was still very heavily involved in that. And so was he. So I was still seeing him pop up on my Facebook and everything. So I was seeing what he was up to. And even with all the rejection that I was like, okay, he's like still living his life. Like that's really cool. You know, he didn't take rejection so to heart. And so at one point I was like, okay, why don't I just reach out to Drake and see what he's up to? And, it'd be cool to catch up in any case. And maybe there's something there, but I don't know. We'll see. And then after having that conversation, we got on Zoom, we had a chat for a couple hours. I got off the phone and I was like, you know what? Drake's actually pretty cool. Like, I really enjoyed that. And anyways, and then after having that conversation, I ended up meeting up with other self-reflected people in Ottawa, which is about 4 hours away from Toronto. And they were supporting me a lot at that time, because there were some other people in the group there that were really involved at that time. And they were challenging me also on the relationship point. So then when I got there, they were like, oh, so how's it going? Do you have any prospects? Blah, 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 blah. And I just mentioned Drake, like very casually. I was like, well, I did talk to Drake, and, and immediately they were like, well, why don't you just go meet him? If you're open to dating and all this stuff. And if, why don't you just go to Florida and like, just go hang out with Drake for a little bit. And worst case scenario, you just get a vacation to Florida and you just come home if it doesn't work out. And I was like, you know what, guys, you're right. Like, that's like, what do I have to lose, really? And especially at this point, like I said, with the pandemic and all this kind of stuff, everything was closed. I'm like, I'm not doing anything right now anyways. Let's just go. So I had decided within myself, but then I had to present it to Drake. So I was like, hey, remember that time that you had asked me to be in a relationship with you? I'm not saying that let's be in a relationship, but what if we like do explore the point and see if this could work out? And he was like, he paused for a moment and he was like, okay, like, just come over. It was really cute. But anyway, so I ended up buying a ticket like a couple weeks later, and we met in person, and yeah, the rest is history, I guess, as they say.
Awesome. I love it. Oh my gosh, that's so great. There's hope for all of us then.
Of course.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's so great that this group is so motivating, but also they hold your feet to the fire. Like, they will keep you accountable. You say you're going to do something, they're going to like, okay, so when you're doing it, like, how's it going? They'll check on you, right? And if you're not doing the work you're supposed to be doing, because that was me. Oh yeah, I'm doing the work. Yeah, you're not. No, I am. I'm working every day on it. No, you're not. Well, I am. Well, you're just doing the surface level then. Like, you got to go deeper.
Right.
It took me a long time to go deeper, but I did. But it's just that constant, like, but that's the community and the friendship, and really is the support, right? It's just that they see the best and they push you for it.
Exactly. And that's also why I've really appreciated the group also, and why I'm still here, and why I now do my best to support other people that are first coming in, because especially, it's one thing to pursue your goals and, to be driven and motivated and all that kind of stuff, but you do need people around you to support you. It's really, really challenging to do things on your own. And really, like, any really successful person will tell you, like, I didn't do this alone. Like, I had people around me in my circle, or I had people, in any capacity, whether it be like mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially, like, people do have their networks of people that get them to the top, essentially. And we have that in our group 100%, where it's like, we want everyone to live their best life. And we don't just say that, to pay it lip service. It's like, no, like, let's actually support you to do that. And what does that look like for you? And of course, everyone's coming in at different stages in their life, and everyone has their own things that they have to walk through. But like I said, as long as you have the group there to fall back on, because we do stumble and fall within, our process of personal development, essentially. Yeah, like, that's where the group becomes invaluable, because it's like, and it's funny, because I find here also, it's like, we're not trying to placate or like to make you feel better just for the sake of making you feel better. It's like, no, are you serious? Because then fuck your feelings. Excuse my language.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Like, are you actually serious about wanting better or improving your life? Because that doesn't mean feeling good all the time. Sometimes we do have to get uncomfortable and really face ourselves. And that can be really uncomfortable for a lot of people, for most people, honestly. So yeah. So no, it's just cool to see, like, also just seeing other people having walk through the things that they've gone through, and then being like, okay, if they've done it, I could do it too. regardless of what it is, even. It's like, you knowing that there's other people that have felt things that I felt or have gone through the things that I've gone through. I think that's also really important, because then you don't feel so alone, or so feel like no one understands me. It's like, no, we're all human, actually, and we all go through things, and have gone through different experiences, and that's where we can really support each other also.
Right, yeah. And we just had this conversation as a group the other day, where it was like, who would you really count on in your family? Like, who would be really there for you? And most of us were like, yeah, not many people, if any, in our family. We would say 100% we could count on them for anything, right? Like, there's things we could count on, but then there's other things maybe we can't. And we all were like, yeah, but we can count on the group here. Like, I'm like, if we can count on our group as our family, like, that's who I put up as my go-to, right? Because and it was amazing. We had that conversation just a few days ago, and then I talked with a friend, and we literally had that same conversation. We're like, isn't it amazing that we go through these things, and we both realize, like, we've got very few people around us right now.
Yeah, it is cool, and like it's funny with family specifically, because as much as family will say that they support you unconditionally and all this stuff that sounds really nice, a lot of the times our families are the ones that actually hold us back. And I think it's unintentional, really. It's just like they're not comfortable with challenging the things that they haven't questioned yet, especially about themselves, or when it comes to like just, sometimes even just as simple as like a reaction. They don't, if we're so used to having these certain interactions with especially family members, that then sometimes when you change and you're not participating in the thing that they're wanting you to participate in, they're like, what do you think, you're better than us or something? Like, that's the response that I've gotten, actually. It's like, it's met with resistance and a feeling of like, oh, you feel like you're like trying to be superior to them now, like you think you're better, or they're trying to like squash you and say like, oh, you're not the same person that you were before. Meanwhile, it's like, but I'm actually trying to do better. So isn't that a good thing? So that's why it's like, as you get older too, you tend to find other people that are not related to you that support you more, because they don't have all the biases of your past to kind of shape who they have of you in your mind.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's hard when people know you for either your whole life or many, many years, and they know you a certain way, and then you do start to do things to make your life better and make yourself better. And it is confrontational, I think, for them, because they're like, but I know you as this.
Right. Exactly. Yep. Yeah. So the group, like I said, it's just if you're looking for that type of support, and you can be at least honest with yourself that you would appreciate something like that, because I think that also can be why somebody wouldn't want to be in the group. And even if they have all the best intentions of like wanting to change themselves, but if you're not willing to face yourself, because it's like no one can do anything for you, right? It's like you have to do the things that you need to do for yourself, and you can have people kind of guide you and point you in the right direction, but at the end of the day, it all comes back on you. And that's why the group is really supportive in that way. But sometimes people also don't like to be faced with the reality of something that maybe they're not willing to challenge within themselves, because it can be really hard to face something that you've held certain beliefs about for so long, and then you're kind of being challenged to think in a new way, and then you're wondering, and then it's like almost like your mind and your brain goes like a kind of like abort mission. Like, this is too much, and then we ended up going back to like the things that we were doing before, and then end up not changing. So again, it's just all depends on the person, but that is why I really appreciated the group. And like I said, it's something now that I want to give back to others, because I got so much support from the people in the group, right? So and it just goes back to that principles, which is something that our group is based on, is 13 set of principles. And one of them is give as you would like to receive. And that's something that I think for a lot of people too, it's like you want to be a part of a community where you can receive, but also you can give back in a way that's not just like giving your good feelings or something, kind of like in a church setting, not to like, poop on church, but like, what I'm saying, it's like, it doesn't feel so like superficial. It's actual giving back, and, whether it be like sharing your experiences or offering a different perspective, So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So what does it mean to you now that you're married and a mother with 2 small children to have a group like this, or have the tools that you have now?
That's a great question, because I mean, I know for a fact that if I did not have this group or the tools, that I would have just done whatever was in my, I guess, what you could call like my pre-programming, whatever I had downloaded from my parents, how I was parented, especially, or how I saw my own parents in their relationships. It's like I would have just kind of gone along with whatever. And like I don't even know what would like there were certain things that I didn't want to do. For example, like I got spanked as a kid, right? And I knew that I didn't want to spank my own kids. Now having children, I can see the reaction that can provoke wanting to spank your kids, but I have so much more awareness now that I'm like, okay, that's not acceptable, but also the reaction within myself is not acceptable, as like wanting to like physically hurt this child to get my point across, kind of thing, right? And like I'm just using that as an example, but like what's cool is that this group has offered so many new perspectives on like parenting and just education in general that you don't really hear. I don't think I've really heard anyone kind of give this type of guidance or instruction of like, hey, this is how you can actually create a very stable and intelligent child that doesn't have to necessarily later on kind of like a lot of the personal development stuff nowadays is like almost like reparenting yourself. Whereas like if you just had the right support and your parents had the right support when they were raising you, you wouldn't have to be doing all this like reparenting yourself essentially, or healing that inner child that we all have, right? It's like actually providing the practical guidance and instruction and like knowledge that is required for you as a parent, or for you being a mother or father, to actually provide that for our kids right now, which is really really cool. And like I said, I would have never necessarily questioned a lot of the things that I can see now coming up, like with me being a parent, if I didn't have this group like at all. Like I said, I would have just kind of done whatever was, you know already within me that I kind of understood, but at the same time, like there's so much there's so much that our world doesn't also prepare us for these types of big life events, such as like getting into a partnership and then also having children, and especially the having children part, because in a partnership, it's like as long as you're willing to like communicate and sort out your your issues, I guess you could say, with your partner, it's like there's like at least the other person um can understand you, and also they're willing to kind of like investigate things for themselves, right? Or at least like be willing to, right? Whereas for children, it's like you're literally having this little being that has no context for like anything. So it's like you um really have to challenge a lot of the ways that you're just automatically going to going to kind of put onto them, if you don't realize what it is that you're doing, especially when it comes to how you communicate with them, or how you give instruction, or how you prepare them for the world, because it's like no one actually tells you the reality of like having kids, especially like it's so challenge it's one of the most challenging yet like rewarding things, and people will say stuff like that, but it's like the little nitty gritty details of like what it's like how I mentioned birth and pregnancy and postpartum, like all of that, the actual details of that, or postpartum, what it's like the first 4 weeks with an infant. Like I see so many people get especially now that I'm seeing a lot of like my friends and just people that I've been following for a long time on social media having babies now. And it's like a huge shock because you've been so focused on your own life and developing your own independence and working on your career and all this kind of stuff, that the idea of having children was more of like, okay, at some point in my life, this is what I'm going to do. But you didn't actually prepare yourself for that chapter in your life. So then when you're actually faced with the reality of it, it's like, this is where we get like moms that have very ambivalent feelings, even just towards their children and parenting, and like are really, really struggling because it's like I said, you've never had like real practice with like small children. And then you're just forced into this really intense situation. That like part of my education, especially within the group, was having the support of, like, for example, Katie Cope, who is kind of like a founding member of this group, and Cameron, who have really, really shared their process of like raising their children and just offered this like amazing level of like awareness and in-depth like telling you the reality of it, but also not in a way that instills fear within you. It's like empowering actually, because it's like
Mhm.
you have the tools, you have the support, you can always reach out to like the people in the group for, how to navigate certain situations. But versus like I just saw a video yesterday where this girl was saying that motherhood is a scam because no one actually prepares you for the reality of it. And she was explaining how certain friends of hers like are just miserable with having children. And I'm like, I agree with what she's saying, but her delivery is like terrible because it's like you're just scaring most people out of like having children. And really it just comes back to an education point where it's like no one's actually educated to like raise kids unless you were like a teacher or like in a daycare setting. And even in those settings, those aren't actually best places to like really nurture children. Like those are kind of institutions that we have in place where it's like you have a lot of kids with one adult, and especially for young kids, like that's not really an ideal situation. um like you're going to be doing a lot of things just to manage the size of the group versus actually giving children like individual attention. And especially since we've gone away from like communities and really having like the village raise the child, it's like now people are very isolated within that aspect. It's like, again, like this is why the group is so important, because even though we're not all physically in the same place, it's like at least we have somewhere where we can come and like ask our questions and be shown a different perspective and a different way of actually parenting and educating children. um like I said, that doesn't have to come from a place of fear. It doesn't have to come from a place of uh, being very either authoritarian with your children, or even on the other end of the spectrum, which is being very permissive, which is what I find with a lot of also people that like with parenting, especially, it's like we kind of swing to the other side of the pendulum, like based on how we were parented. Whereas
Mhm.
like you're just going to the other polarity versus actually like looking at, okay, what would actually be best in this situation. And like I think for like a lot of our generation, it was very like authoritarian, disciplinarian type of thing. And now it's like my generation is going like the opposite of like kind of being permissive. And then you
Mhm.
have these like children now in school that like, anyways, teachers are just not able to handle these kids even more because of this like this lack of education from the parent side of things. And then I mean, there's just so many things wrong with like our current situation just when it involves children and education and parenting and all that kind of stuff. But like, um, yeah, I mean, I know this is now like a long-winded answer for what you were asking, but I know for a fact that this like I just wouldn't have even had this perspective. I don't even think I would have had a home birth actually if it wasn't for this group, to be honest. Like, just there's so many different levels of this where like, I mean, without it, like I said, I would have just fallen into the same thing that I can see what other people my age are doing, essentially. So that's why I also really like sharing what we're doing, because it's just so different and out of what society is saying, but it's also kind of, it's not, again, coming from a place of fear. It's like, let's face all these things and actually prepare people to be really, really effective,
Mhm.
like, and versus coming at it from this point of, um, like, I think for our parents, it's like these things weren't the things that I know now weren't around. So it's like you also have to give them a little bit of credit where it's like, well, they didn't have the tools and the information that's available now, you know. So now that we can do better and we know better, it's like you want to do better, right? And
Mhm.
especially now that I have access to this group, I'm like, well, there's no excuse now for me not to challenge the things that I thought was acceptable in parenting, you know. And like I said, I thought I had a general idea, but now being in it, I'm like, holy crap, like I would probably be so miserable. And it's funny because I think back to like how my mom parented, and you know, she did obviously did her best, and we had a pretty my brother and I had a pretty decent childhood, but um like, I can see that there was a lot of especially, like, emotional stuff where it's just, like, very angry, very frustrated, overwhelmed, and because parenting is really hard, and you are gonna be faced with those feelings, but, um, I mean, there is a level where it's, like, you have so much not self-control, but, like, ability to self-direct
Mhm.
that that specific thing is what our parents just didn't have any awareness of, or even just challenging certain things. Like, I find like back when we were being parented, it's like no one really challenged anything really, unless like you were faced with something, or like you were already had that kind of pre-program because of your parents were kind of like on the off beaten path. But like for the most part, you just kind of did what everybody else was doing. You know, especially when it came to like school and parenting and all kinds of stuff. So yeah.
Wow. I mean, thank you for going into depth like that, because I think that is something that people don't think about now. They look at either how their parents raised them and they go, "Hell no, I'm not having kids because I don't want to be like them." Or they're like, "I'm going to do better than them." And they do completely opposite what their parents had, but there's no guidelines. There's no, and they're still trying to figure it out themselves, right? If they
Yeah.
decide to have kids. Because like you said, a lot of people are now going, "Well, I'll just wait. Maybe I won't have kids and I'll focus on me and my career and stuff," right? So
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's, the few who do want to have kids, um, they're in that situation, right? So it's nice to know that there is such a support and such a good group of education being shared for people on how to parent and how to, having the tools, like you said, now that our parents didn't have, right? And having the resources, I think is very important for people to hear. Um, Especially anyone who thinks maybe I want kids, I don't know, but I certainly don't want to do what my parents did.
Right. Yeah. And that's a tough decision, especially when like you're seeing a lot of the messaging too, just in general with media and social media, is like not get more geared towards not having children, you know, and it's very much focused on like your own personal happiness, your own personal experience and all this stuff. And I mean, I can understand that because I there was a little part of me before joining this group where it kind of was tempted by that lifestyle kind of thing, but I knew it wasn't going to be fulfilling in the end. And I mean, you can see here all sorts of arguments about like, you know, children, like does children really complete your life in a certain sense, or is it really that fulfilling? But it's I think it's more that without the parenting experience, and especially if you're being very intentional with parenting specifically, it's you get to face yourself in so many different ways. Like it's really like such a huge personal development. Like to me, it's almost like the ultimate personal development challenge because there's so many opportunities to really challenge and face yourself, and to face yourself within the storm of like tantrums and being and teaching somebody essentially that has no context for like for what you know about reality at all, you know. And I like Drake and I talk about this all the time where it's like it's almost like a test on like how much do you actually understand about reality, because now I have to instruct it to somebody else that has, like I said, no vocabulary or understanding of like the things that I just inherently know based on my 33 years of life experience. You know. So and it's cool because you people kind of underestimate the intelligence of children. There's like a overestimation, but then there's also like an underestimation of like how much you can actually explain. to a little kid. And like we have, our oldest is 2 years old. She just turned 2. And she understands so much. And we just like have, ever since she was little, we've just always explained, it didn't matter that she didn't necessarily have words or that she would give us any feedback by talking back to us. But it was just this practicing this point of like just explaining things to her, because it's like it was just practice for us to like better our communication with her as she got older. And also just under like just going through this process of like I really have to like teach this being how to, of like the things that I know, but also do it in a way that they'll actually be effective. And I, like I said before, not having all my like my like person, you know, the things that I believe, I guess, like personal beliefs or my biases, I guess is the word that I'm looking for, is like my biases being placed on this person, on this little person that like doesn't have any biases about anything. And not to say that having certain biases is not valid, but like a lot of them can be challenged, and it's also just giving them the skill to be able to challenge what you're saying in a way that you just again like just opens up communication with your kids versus like I find what a lot of people end up doing is like kind of relying on like school to teach the kid and everything, whereas like there's so much learning that just happens like at home from the moment that they're born. Really. So yeah, like it's anyways, I guess what I'm trying to say is there is a lot of messaging around not having children, but I think if people actually saw the immense potential that you can create by having children and realizing that having children is also the way that we build the future, because it's like regardless of whether you have kids or not, other people are going to be having kids, right? And I think it's cool to get into this point, you know, as we kind of maybe start wrapping up, but it's like the world is going to continue on at, you know, after our lives, and there's other people's, and the people that inherit that world is like the children that are here now. And it's like if we're just going to be so absorbed in our own self experience of like how I enjoy my life now with no consideration of like the people coming after, like what does that say about you just as a person? You know, um it's like it almost sounds kind of cheesy, like thinking like, well, don't you want to leave the world a better place? And it's like I think most people would say yeah, but it's like, okay, but how are you contributing to that actually? And not everyone necessarily has to have children to do that, but it's like this is having children is definitely an opportunity for you to actually create something that will be here after you're gone, kind of thing. And especially with what the principles that we live by in this group of creating a world that's best for all, it like I like to me the having children part is like essential to that, because if we don't take care of the children now, like, and you know, especially with all the abuse and poverty and you know the people living in certain conditions now, that like if you're depending on where you're born determines pretty much like the outcome of your life, um like if we don't challenge all that stuff now with the life that we're given right now, it's like there's going to be no world or like no earth to enjoy and experience, like potentially 50 to 100 years from now, and even more, you know, like I'm just saying like it might be after your lifetime kind of thing, so it might not matter to you in that kind of sense. But again, like what does that say about you wanting to leave the world a better place then? Because it's like we're so focused on our own, like I said, our own experience right now and wanting to feel good and wanting to like be able to have this like freedom. But like I said, if we're not considering everybody, like everybody that's on earth right now to have a good life, and we see what's happening with like all this crazy stuff with like war and everything's just getting so crazy now, where it's like it's just gonna compress to a point where it's like not no one's gonna be able to enjoy any of this, and there's so much to enjoy in life actually, right? And I think that's part of like my bigger, or it, not that I think it is my part of my bigger mission of like wanting to change the system fundamentally, because we do want, you know, generations from now to be able to enjoy the things that we enjoy now, but even more, because um I want everybody, every single person that is born into this world to be able to experience that, not just the few that get to experience that right now just because they have some money, you know. And I know that's like a huge bigger topic, and like you know, kind of goes more in depth of like the purpose even just behind the like self-perfected group. But I think it's just, it is important to mention of like, you know, what greater impact do we want to have actually, that, and not just paying lip service to that type of like wanting to have a bigger purpose or wanting to make a difference or wanting to make an impact. And especially as like a woman, like a female and a mother and a wife now, it's like I can see very clearly the long-term vision of like, you know, being able to create something like that, especially like because with small children, it's like you have this being that you're supporting for at least 18 years of their life. So it's like I have to think long term anyways, you know? So again, it is a cool opportunity to really be able to face, you know, those things within yourself as a parent, right? And yeah, so that's what I kind of wanted to say about that, because like you said, it is kind of scary sometimes for some people, and we're being pushed away from it, but it is like almost like the ultimate personal development journey that you could take on, actually.
So something good if people really want to develop themselves is to be the best selves they can be and become a parent and be the best parent that they can be in, right?
Yeah, basically.
Wow. Great. I know some people are going to get confronted by that thought, and I think it's a good point for them to come and talk to our group and come talk and check out the things, because maybe that's something that we should have a conversation about, right? Why is that such a hard thing to face or hear from somebody, especially somebody who is in their generation, right? Talking, you know, living with, growing up with the same kinds of things they grew up with, the same media exposure and things like that, right? So I think that might be a
Yeah.
good conversation for someone further if they want. Now, I know you're probably looking at the clock because you're worried the kids are going to start getting up.
Yeah.
But before you go, if you were to go back to your 10-year-old or 5-year-old self and were to give her some advice, what would you give her?
I'm gonna tell you the first thing that came to my head, because it's like probably not what people would expect, but I would probably tell her to not go to university. Like squash that plan and um explore like I wish someone had told me about like entrepreneurship and all that kind of stuff earlier on, just because it just kind of that really opened up like a lot of other things for me, you know. But um I was so focused on like I just have to get a job to pay my bills, to support me until like I can basically retire. Like that was like my singular focus at that time, and I just you know, and I know my parents had the best intentions, like putting that within me. But if I could go back to telling myself that, like I just wish I had known that there was more other options, you know, and I didn't have to go down that path, because I just like lived like I was just so miserable going through that, because I was just like, well, I'm going through the motions, and then like I know we never even got into this in the in our conversation, but like university was probably one of the hardest uh just like most like kind of depressing experiences for me. Like either, you know, they say that's supposed to be like the best time of your life. For me, it was like not at all. And then I was also very angry after, because I was like, well, I did what everyone told me to do, and it didn't turn out the way that you're telling me that it was supposed to. Right. So and I remember at around that age is when I had like decided what I wanted to be when I grew up, kind of thing. So it was interesting that you said that age, because I was like, yeah, like I wish I just wish I had been told of like more opportunity, I guess. Right. And I could tell myself like, hey, you don't have to make a decision like that right now. Like you can kind of, continue like, at that time it's like I would have been like, okay, well, I could continue going to school, but like don't, I guess, pigeonhole myself into this one career path, right? Which, some would argue, well, it wouldn't have led you to where you are now. Maybe not, but yeah, I just know that I won't be telling my daughter the same the same advices that I got when she was 10. When she's done, I mean.
Well, that's great. And yeah, I tried to buck the system so long and kept getting the pressure to go to school, and so I ended up getting schooling, but not a degree. And yeah, I still was trying to buck the system, still am. So
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I think once you start bucking the system, you're like, it's like a lifelong thing. Yeah, but no, it's just like, oh, and the other thing I would probably tell myself is like learn real skills. Like instead of doing the career thing, like learn practical real skills. Like I wish I had learned how to like cook and um just like different things that like now those are things that I'm going to make sure that my daughter has, especially by the time she's 10, versus being so focused on achieving this thing that wasn't even guaranteed at that time, you know? So, yeah. That would be if I would like I think what I'm trying to get at is more like more concise advice. I'd be like, learn some skills. Cuz yeah, that was something that I just wasn't supported with, was like even just the little basic things like cooking and cleaning properly, and people are like, why would you say that? But it's like those are actual skills that you need later on in life that I was forced to learn when I was like moved out of my parents' house. Like those are things that should have been kind of like in a way like automated, instead of having to learn them when I'm like 25, so yeah.
great. Is there anything else that you want to mention or talk about before you go? Because I know you are probably don't want the kids starting screaming soon. So
No, it's okay. Well, Drake's got them, so it's okay.
okay.
Any final thoughts? I would just say, I mean, if you haven't joined the group and you like this conversation, like definitely come join. Like I'm not the only testimonial of having, really kind of cool success story in the group. Like there's multiple people that have found partners, that have built really solid relationships, or have built businesses within the group, have made more money, have become better parents, there's people that have, been on the brink of divorce and ended up having really successful marriages. And yeah, there's just so much that has come out of this group that it's not just me telling my story. It's like there's a lot of us that have also really benefited from the group and are also now willing to give back, right? And be there as a support to you or whoever comes into the group now. And yeah, and then just don't stop questioning things. Like I think that's something that also people really really need to also just challenge within themselves. It's like, don't stop questioning things, and our group is a great place to question things, and then also have a sound and like a cool community where you can bring all that stuff. But then there's also like, we want to steer people in like the right direction kind of thing, so there's questioning, but also, okay, like where do we go from here kind of thing. And that's what I like about this group, is that we are always talking about how to not just improve ourselves, but improve this world, and creating real solutions for the problems that we see in this world. And it all just starts with the self, but we have to do it in a group, and yeah, that's why I definitely highly recommend that you join the group if you're listening to this. Yeah, because real change actually happens within a group, and it takes one small little group to really change the course of history, honestly. And we want that history, or at least like the future history, to be something much, much better than what we're experiencing right now. Right. And I think a lot of people can say that too. Like, I think we're all tired of hearing that we're still fighting wars and that people are still dying of poverty and starvation in 2025 when we have robots being built now. It's just like, it's crazy that we're living in this day and age where we have so much technology, but we haven't even figured out the basics of fixing very, very basic things in this world, to give everybody a equal and an equal opportunity at life, at least,
Oh, thank you so much, Christine. I appreciate you spending this time on your Saturday with me and away from the kids and Drake, because I know he's running around all week too. So thank you.
Yeah. No, thanks for having me. It was great.